Hey guys, Nikolai here with FPV Films. I wanted to make this video to share a little bit about my experience being under an FAA investigation and share some tips on what you can do to avoid being in a situation like that, along with what to do if you ever end up in one. So about a week after our house fire, both Cart and I get this letter in the mail from the FAA which basically said that they're investigating a public complaint for flying a drone over people. We have 10 days to respond or to make a statement. We don't have to make a statement, but whatever we say will be given consideration. If they don't hear from us, the report will be processed regardless. So of course we kind of freaked out because if you do a quick Google search, you can see FAA fines running up to $10,000 to $20,000, and we just had our house burned down and lost a lot of stuff. So of course we were really scared. So the first thing I did was I reached out to Brent Eliason. Early on when we first posted the video, Brent reached out to me and he introduced himself as somebody who has a lot of experience working with the FAA. He has advanced UAS operations certifications, and he's basically just done a lot of work with them to acquire that, so he knows how they operate. And what he did was he just gave me some tips in case the FAA ever decided to reach out to me with regards to this video, because there hasn't really been a case, not that I know of, where somebody gets investigated for a Cinewoop flight. So we thought that this might be a good opportunity to kind of bring up this issue with the FAA in case they do ever reach out to me. Once they did, I gave him a call and he did us a huge favor. He basically sat down with us and reviewed the entire flight and typed up a 4-page essay on the safety elements of the flight. And I can read you, specific segments that we discussed. The first thing that we discussed was the fact that I had a visual observer. I actually had two, one of which was my buddy Ethan, who actually went up to the protesters that were on the statue, and he asked him if it would have been okay if I recorded them. These little tiny elements, they might not seem like much, but it shows that we're professional about what we do and we're trying to keep this safe. The next thing we discussed was the size of the UAS. A Cinewoop, you can see it back on the wall here. It's much less than a Phantom. It's about the same size as a Mavic Mini, so it's not going to be very heavy, and if it were to fall from the sky, it wouldn't cause a lot of damage to property or people. The other thing we discussed was protection from lacerations. So Cinewoop ducts work as great prop guards. We mentioned that I have countless videos on my Instagram where I have run into people in the past and they have had no damages whatsoever. And it just shows that these Cinewoops are a lot more safe to operate around people than traditional, Phantoms or Mavics, because they're not going to cut you up unless you stick your finger in it on purpose. We also discussed kinetic energy. If you notice throughout the flight, I made sure to stay very low to the ground because I knew that if my drone happened to fail safe or something happened where I needed to disarm it, I didn't want it to fall from 200 feet and gain a bunch of speed before it hit the ground. I made sure to keep around 10 to 20 feet above the crowd to make sure that if I do fail safe, it wouldn't hurt or injure anyone on the way down. And I think that was a really important point because there are metrics that the FAA uses to determine how safe a drone is if it were to deploy a parachute system. What would be the force of it impacting a ground, or if there was a person under it. That's another thing that we brought up because we thought that the kinetic energy was within the safety range, even though it is really hard to calculate based on just looking at the footage. We thought that would make a good addition to this letter that we wrote. Finally, we discussed the flight termination system. With FPV pilots, it's pretty obvious you have a disarming switch, but for somebody who doesn't have any experience with FPV, it's important to note that this can be also used as a safety mechanism. If something wrong happens with the drone, let's say you go out of range, it's automatically going to disarm, and also we can trigger that manually. So after we typed all that up, there's another section to the letter that we added, which I think was probably the most important section and the one that pilots don't know much about. The FAA has this thing called the compliance program, and they actually sent it with the letter, a little brochure kind of thing, and I'm going to read a little bit from it. The compliance program represents a risk-based focus on using, where appropriate, non-enforcement methods to correct unintentional deviations or non-compliance arising from flawed systems, procedures, simple mistakes, lack of understanding, or diminished skills. It's intended to fix safety problems using an open and transparent safety information exchange between FAA personnel and you. If you are qualified and both willing and able to cooperate, the FAA will resolve the issue with compliance tools, techniques, concepts, and programs. So basically what this program is, it's a way for the FAA to help educate you in case you make a mistake the first time you have a flight where you mess up and you do something dumb or unsafe. Taking this approach is probably the most important thing that we did for this case because it shows that we're open for discussion and cooperation, and we're not making the FAA investigator's job more difficult than it needs to be. After I sent out the letter to the FAA investigator, he requested that we set up a time to discuss the incident. So we ended up setting up a Zoom call for about 2 hours. We discussed the incident, discussed the safety of it, discussed how I could have done that legally. And for the most part, the discussion was basically me asking a bunch of questions about certification. It was a good learning experience and very educational on what is possible with drones. And by the end of the conversation, he ended up giving me a warning basically and closing the case. One good thing that came out of this discussion was I ended up inviting the FAA investigator for an FPV ride-along because he actually told me that he's never seen an FPV drone in person before and he'd love to learn more. So we ended up going to a park and I actually let him fly my Engelwood, which is kind of amazing because he didn't have any similar practice or training whatsoever. He just kind of started flying it and he did really well. So I think that was a great experience just because it kind of bridges the gap between what the FAA knows about FPV drones and what FPV pilots know about the FAA. So I thought that was really good. So what did I learn from this whole experience? Well, the first is it's really important to come in with the right attitude. The FAA rep that's investigating you is just doing their job. Chances are they just want to close your case and move on to the next one. If you come in with the wrong attitude and you make their job more difficult, you're just probably shooting yourself in the foot. The compliance program is there for a reason and I highly recommend using it if you ever end up in a similar situation. Of course, it's not a get out of jail free card, but it can be very useful if it's a first time offense or just an honest mistake. The second thing I learned was be careful what you post. And what I mean by that isn't the common sense of don't post illegal flights. What I mean by that is if you ever have a video that is being investigated by the FAA, they're not just going to look at that video, they're going to look at your entire videos you've ever made. And that's what really surprised me when I had that discussion with the FAA rep, was he was bringing up videos that I made from way back. I think that's actually what helped us a lot, was because a lot of our videos, you can see that we pay particular attention to safety. When we're flying with the pole dancer, we had the meshes over our Engelwood ducts. Whenever we fly formation flights, you can see us going through a pre-flight checklist. So all of those factors, I think, played a role in the final decision. But if we were posting a bunch of illegal flights on the regular, I think the punishment would have been much more severe. Another thing I learned is that deleting your post does nothing. If you happen to record a sketchy video and post it online, you're getting a bunch of views and comments, chances are an FAA safety rep has already come across it and has screen recorded it. So now if you delete it, it's going to look like you're trying to cover up what you did, and it might hurt you when you're having a discussion with an FAA investigator. We never deleted the video that we posted, but the reason I bring this up is I just wanted to reiterate that whatever you post online isn't really yours anymore, and that if you're already getting a bunch of views and comments, in my opinion, it might be best to just leave it up. The final thing I learned from this whole experience, take it or leave it, but I think it's best to block your haters. And what I mean by haters is people who consistently complain with every video you produce. It can be the most innocent video you've ever made, but they're still gonna say something negative, whether it's how you're flying or where you're flying. They're gonna try to make it seem like what you're doing is illegal. The reason I bring this up is that in my subsequent discussions with the FAA investigator, he said that people have reported more of our videos afterward. There was nothing wrong in the eyes of the FAA that we did in that video. These people just didn't like the content and they were trying to see us suffer. So the best thing against that is just to block them off the bat. That way you're not wasting your time, and you're also not wasting the FAA investigator's time to have to look into a video that has nothing wrong with it, but they just have to do it because it's their job. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found some kind of value out of it.